May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. 2 Kings chapter 11. As soon as Athaliah heard that her son King Ahaziah was dead, she decided to kill any relative who could possibly become king. She would have done that, but Jehosheba rescued Joash, son of Ahaziah, just as he was about to be murdered. Jehosheba, who was Jehoram's daughter and Ahaziah's half-sister, hid her nephew Joash and his personal servant in a bedroom in our father's temple, where he was safe from Athaliah. Joash hid in the temple with Jehosheba for 6 years while Athaliah ruled as queen of Judah. Joash, son of Ahaziah, had hidden in our father's temple 6 years. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada, the priest, sent for the commanders of the king's special bodyguards and the commanders of the palace guards. They met him at the temple, and he asked them to make a promise in the name of our Father in heaven. Then he brought out Joash and said to them, "Here's what I want you to do. 3 of your guard units will be on duty on the Sabbath. I want 1 unit to guard the palace, and another unit will guard the Sur gate, and the 3rd unit will guard the palace gate and relieve the palace guards. The other 2 guard units are supposed to be off duty on the Sabbath, but I want both of them to stay here at the temple and protect King Joash. Make sure they follow him wherever he goes, and tell them to keep their swords ready to kill anyone who tries to get near him." The commanders followed Jehoiada's orders. Each one called together his guards, those coming on duty and those going off duty. Jehoiada brought out the swords and shields that had belonged to King David and gave them to the commanders. Then they gave the weapons to their guards, who took their positions around the temple and the altar to protect Joash on every side. Jehoiada brought Joash outside, where he placed the crown on his head and gave him a copy of instructions for ruling the nation. Olive oil was poured on his head to show that he was now king, while the crowd clapped and shouted, "Long live the king!" Queen Athaliah heard the crowd and went into the temple. There she saw Joash standing by one of the columns, which was the usual place for the king. The singers and the trumpet players were standing next to him, and the people were celebrating and blowing trumpets. Athaliah tore her clothes in anger and shouted, "You betrayed me, you traitors!" At once, Jehoiada said to the army commanders, "Kill her, but don't do it anywhere near our father's temple. Take her out in front of the troops and kill anyone who is with her." So the commanders dragged her to the gate where horses are led into the palace, and they killed her there. Jehoiada, the priest, asked King Joash and the people to promise that they would be faithful to each other and to our father. Then the crowd went to the temple built to honor Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, right in front of the altars. After Jehoiada had placed guards around our father's temple, he called together all the commanders, the king's special bodyguards, the palace guards, and the people. They led Joash from the temple, through the guards' gate, and into the palace. He took his place on the throne and became king of Judah. Everyone celebrated because Athaliah had been killed and Jerusalem was peaceful again. Joash was only 7 years old when this happened. 2 Kings chapter 12. Joash became king of Judah in Jehu's 7th year as king of Israel, and he ruled 40 years from Jerusalem. His mother, Zebiah, was from the town of Beersheba. Jehoiada, the priest, taught Joash what was right, and so for the rest of his life, Joash obeyed our Father in heaven. But even Joash did not destroy the local shrines, and they were still used as places for offering sacrifices. One day, Joash said to the priest, "Collect all the money that has been given to our father's temple, whether from taxes or gifts, and use it to repair the temple whenever you see the need." But the priest never started repairing the temple. So in the 23rd year of his rule, Joash called for Jehoiada and the other priests and said, "Why aren't you using the money to repair the temple? Don't take any more money for yourselves. It is only to be used to pay for the repairs." The priests agreed that they would not collect any more money or be in charge of the temple repairs. Jehoiada found a wooden box. He cut a hole in the top of it and set it on the right side of the altar where people went into the temple. Whenever someone gave money to the temple, the priest guarding the entrance would put it into this box. When the box was full of money, the king's secretary and the chief priest would count the money and put it in bags. Then they would give it to the men supervising the repairs to the temple. Some of the money was used to pay the builders, the woodworkers, the stonecutters, and the men who built the walls. And some was used to buy wood and stone and to pay any other cost for repairing the temple. While the repairs were being made, the money that was given to the temple was not used to make silver bowls, lamp snuffers, small sprinkling bowls, trumpets, or anything gold or silver for the temple. It went only to pay for the repairs. The men in charge were honest, so no one had to keep track of the money. The fines that had to be paid along with the sacrifices to make things right and the sacrifices for sin did not go into the temple. This money belonged only to the priest. About the same time, King Hazael of Syria attacked the town of Gath and captured it. Next, he decided to attack Jerusalem. So Joash collected everything he and his ancestors, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, had dedicated to our Father in heaven, as well as the gold in the storage rooms in the temple and palace. He sent it all to Hazael as a gift, and when Hazael received it, he ordered his troops to leave Jerusalem. Everything else Joash did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. At the end of his rule, some of his officers rebelled against him. Jozabad, son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, murdered him in a building where the land was filled in on the east side of Jerusalem near the road to Silah. Joash was buried beside his ancestors in Jerusalem, and his son Amaziah became king. 2 Kings chapter 13. Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king of Israel in the 23rd year of Joash's rule in Judah. Jehoahaz ruled 17 years from Samaria and disobeyed our Father in heaven by doing wrong. He never stopped following the example of Jeroboam, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Our Father in heaven was angry with the Israelites, so he let King Hazael of Syria and his son Ben-Hadad rule over them for a long time. Jehoahaz prayed to our Father in heaven for help, and our Father in heaven saw how terribly Hazael was treating the Israelites. He answered Jehoahaz by sending Israel a leader who rescued them from the Syrians, and the Israelites lived in peace as they had before. But Hazael had defeated Israel's army so badly that Jehoahaz had only 10 chariots, 50 cavalry troops, and 10,000 regular soldiers left in his army. The Israelites kept sinning and following the example of Jeroboam's family. They did not tear down the sacred poles that had been set up in Samaria for the worship of the goddess Asherah. Everything else Jehoahaz did while he was king, including his brave deeds, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Jehoahaz died and was buried in Samaria, and his son Jehoash became king. Jehoash became king of Israel in the 37th year of Joash's rule in Judah, and he ruled 16 years from Samaria. He disobeyed our Father in heaven by doing just like Jeroboam, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Everything else Jehoash did while he was king, including his war against King Amaziah of Judah, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Jehoash died and was buried in Samaria beside the other Israelite kings. His son, Jeroboam, then became king. Sometime before the death of King Jehoash, Elisha the prophet was very sick and about to die. Jehoash went in and stood beside him, crying. He said, "Master, what will Israel's chariots and cavalry be able to do without you?" "Grab a bow and some arrows," Elisha told him, "and hold them in your hand." Jehoash grabbed the bow and arrows and held them. Elisha placed his hand on the king's hand and said, "Open the window facing east." When it was open, Elijah shouted, "Now shoot." Jehoash shot an arrow, and Elisha said, "That arrow is a sign that our Father in heaven will help you completely defeat the Syrian army at Aphek." Elisha said, "Pick up the arrows and hit the ground with them." Jehoash grabbed the arrows and hit the ground 3 times, then stopped. Elisha became angry with the king and exclaimed, "If you had struck it 5 or 6 times, you would completely wipe out the Syrians. Now you will defeat them only 3 times. Elisha died and was buried. Every year in the spring, Moab's leaders sent raiding parties into Israel. Once, while some Israelites were burying a man's body, they saw a group of Moabites. The Israelites quickly threw the body into Elisha's tomb and ran away. As soon as the man's body touched the bones of Elisha, the man came back to life and stood up. Israel was under the power of King Hazael of Syria during the entire rule of Jehoahaz. But our Father in heaven was kind to the Israelites and showed them mercy because of his solemn agreement with their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In fact, he has never turned his back on them or let them be completely destroyed. Hazael died, and his son Ben-Hadad then became king of Syria. King Joash of Israel attacked and defeated the Syrian army 3 times. He took back from Ben-Hadad all the towns Hazael had captured in battle from his father Jehoahaz. 2 Kings chapter 14. King Amaziah of Judah. Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah in the 2nd year of Jehoash's rule in Israel. Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he ruled 29 years from Jerusalem, which was also the hometown of his mother, Jehoadin. Amaziah followed the example of his father Joash by obeying our Father in heaven and doing right. But he was not as faithful as his ancestor David. Amaziah did not destroy the local shrines, and they were still used as places for offering sacrifices. As soon as Amaziah had control of Judah, he arrested and killed the officers who had murdered his father. But the children of those officers were not killed. Our Father in heaven had commanded in the law of Moses that only the people who sinned were to be punished, not their parents or children. While Amaziah was king, he killed 10,000 Edomite soldiers in Salt Valley. He captured the town of Selah and renamed it Joktheel, which is still its name. One day, Amaziah sent a message to King Joash of Israel: "Come out and face me in battle." Jehoash sent back this reply: "Once upon a time, a small thorn bush in Lebanon announced that his son was going to marry the daughter of a large cedar tree. But a wild animal came along and trampled the small bush. Amaziah, you think you're so powerful because you defeated Edom. Go ahead and celebrate, but stay at home. If you cause any trouble, both you and your kingdom of Judah will be destroyed." But Amaziah refused to listen. So Jehoash and his troops marched to the town of Beth Shemesh in Judah to attack Amaziah and his troops. During the battle, Judah's army was crushed. Every soldier from Judah ran back home, and Joash captured Amaziah. Jehoash then marched to Jerusalem and broke down the city wall from Ephraim Gate to Corner Gate, a section nearly 200 meters long. He took the gold and silver, as well as everything of value from our father's temple and the king's treasury. He took hostages, then returned to Samaria. Everything else Jehoash did while he was king, including his brave deeds and how he defeated King Amaziah of Judah, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Jehoash died and was buried in Samaria beside the other Israelite kings. His son Jeroboam then became king. 15 years after Jehoash died, some people in Jerusalem plotted against Amaziah. He was able to escape to the town of Lachish, but another group of people caught him and killed him there. His body was taken back to Jerusalem on horseback and buried beside his ancestors. Everything else Amaziah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. After his death, the people of Judah made his son Azariah king, even though he was only 16 at the time. Azariah was the one who later recaptured and rebuilt the town of Eloth. Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, became king of Israel in the 15th year of Amaziah's rule in Judah. Jeroboam ruled 41 years from Samaria. He disobeyed our Father in heaven by following the evil example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Jeroboam extended the boundaries of Israel from Lebo Hamath in the north to the Dead Sea in the south, just as our Father in heaven had promised his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, who was a prophet from Gath Hepher. Our Father in heaven helped Jeroboam do this because he had seen how terribly the Israelites were suffering, whether slave or free, and no one was left to help them. And since our Father in heaven had promised that he would not let Israel be completely destroyed, he helped Jeroboam rescue them. Everything else Jeroboam did while he was king, including his brave deeds and how he recaptured the towns of Damascus and Hamath, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Jeroboam died and was buried, and his son Zechariah became king. 2 Kings chapter 15. Azariah, son of Amaziah, became king of Judah in Jeroboam's 27th year as king of Israel. He was only 16 years old when he became king, and he ruled 52 years from Jerusalem, which was also the hometown of his mother, Jecholiah. Azariah obeyed our Father in heaven by doing right, as his father Amaziah had done. But Azariah did not destroy the local shrines, and they were still used as places for offering sacrifices. Our Father in heaven punished Azariah with leprosy for the rest of his life. He wasn't allowed to live in the royal palace, so his son Jotham lived there and ruled in his place. Everything else Azariah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. Azariah died and was buried beside his ancestors in Jerusalem. His son Jotham then became king. Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, became king of Israel in the 38th year of Azariah's rule in Judah, but he ruled only 6 months from Samaria. Like his ancestors, Zechariah disobeyed our Father in heaven by following the evil ways of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who had caused the Israelites to sin. Shallum, son of Jabesh, plotted against Zechariah and killed him in public. Shallum then became king. So our Father in heaven had kept his promise to Jehu that the next 4 kings of Israel would come from his family. Everything else Zechariah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Shallum became king of Israel in the 39th year of Azariah's rule in Judah. But only 1 month after Shallum became king, Menahem, son of Gadai, came to Samaria from Tirzah and killed him. Menahem then became king. The town of Tiphsah would not surrender to him, so he destroyed it and all the surrounding towns as far as Tirzah. He killed everyone living in Tiphsah, and with his sword he even ripped open pregnant women. Everything else Shallum did while he was king, including his plot against Zechariah, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Menahem became king of Israel in Azariah's 39th year as king of Judah, and he ruled Israel 10 years from Samaria. He constantly disobeyed our Father in heaven by following the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who would cause the Israelites to sin. During Menahem's rule, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria invaded Israel. He agreed to help Menahem keep control of his kingdom if Menahem would pay him over 34 tons of silver. So Menahem ordered every rich person in Israel to give him at least 50 pieces of silver, and he gave it all to Tiglath-Pileser, who stopped his attack and left Israel. Everything else Menahem did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Menahem died, and his son Pekahiah became king. Pekahiah became king of Israel in the 50th year of Azariah's rule in Judah, and he ruled 2 years from Samaria. He disobeyed our Father in heaven and caused the Israelites to sin, just as Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had done. Pekah, son of Remaliah, was Pekahiah's chief officer, but he made plans to kill the king. So he and 50 men from Gilead broke into the strongest part of the palace in Samaria and murdered Pekahiah, together with Argob and Ariah. Pekah then became king. Everything else Pekahiah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel in Azariah's 52nd year as king of Judah, and he ruled 20 years from Samaria. He disobeyed our Father in heaven and followed the evil example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who had caused the Israelites to sin. During Pekah's rule, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria marched into Israel. He captured the territories of Gilead and Galilee, including the towns of Ijon, Abel Beth Maacah, Janoah, Kadesh, and Hazor, as well as the entire territory of Naphtali. Then he took Israelites from those regions to Assyria as prisoners. In the 20th year of Jotham's rule in Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, plotted against Pekah and murdered him. Hoshea then became king of Israel. Everything else Pekah did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Jotham, son of Azariah, became king of Judah in the 2nd year of Pekah's rule in Israel. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he ruled 16 years from Jerusalem. His mother, Jerusha, was the daughter of Zadok. Jotham followed the example of his father by obeying our Father in heaven and doing right. It was Jotham who rebuilt the upper gate that led into the court around our Father in heaven's temple. But the local shrines were not destroyed, and they were still used as places for offering sacrifices. Everything else Jotham did while he was king is written in the history of the kings of Judah. During his rule, our Father in heaven let King Rezin of Syria and King Pekah of Israel start attacking Judah. Jotham died and was buried beside his ancestors in Jerusalem, and his son Ahaz became king. Father willing, we will continue with 2 Kings chapter 16. May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. Repent. The kingdom of heaven is near. Peace.